How do we respond when we've been wronged? The desire for revenge and retribution is natural, and our justice system is designed to mete out the right punishment to fit the crime. So where does forgiveness fit in? And why is it so important? Ameneh was a woman who had waited a long time for justice. In 2004, while she was returning home from work, a man named Majid threw a bucket full of acid into her face, leaving her blinded and disfigured. The backstory goes that Barami had repeatedly turned down Majid's proposal of marriage, which included promises to kill her unless she consented. Instead of carrying out that threat, Majid decided that if he couldn't have her, he would make sure that no other man would want her. The Iranian courts determined on a fine and a prison sentence for Majid, but his victim insisted that she was entitled by law to retribution because it was only in this way that Majid could understand her pain. 4 years later, in 2008, she won the case. And so it was planned that on the 14th of May 2011, Ameneh's wish would be carried out. Majid was to be taken to Tehran's judiciary hospital. There, under full anaesthetic, he would have drops of acid put into each of his eyes that would render him blind. But when the day arrived, and as Majid was being prepared by the nurses, Ameneh decided not to go through with it, saying, "I forgive him. I forgive him." The story hit the international news. All sorts of opinions were given. Some said forgiving Majid was a beautiful gesture of grace and kindness. Others said she shouldn't have forgiven him. It was fair, after all, that he'd experienced what she had, and her forgiveness meant that justice wasn't done. Another commentator argued that blinding Majid was good since it would act as a detriment to other men. He had a point. There were over 7,000 documented acid-throwing incidents in the area at the time. It's interesting to note that in Scripture, ancient Israel was one of the first nations to institute this idea of equal retribution. The law of taking an eye for an eye was actually an adjustment to the previous system, where if someone took your eye, your response was to take 2 eyes. This law stopped the process escalating. It showed that the punishment should fit the crime. Our modern justice systems recognise that same principle of fairness in sentencing. So, for example, if a person takes the life of another, they're more likely to get life imprisonment. The punishment is designed to meet the crime. According to this idea, then, it was fair that Majid had acid poured into his eyes. But instead, Ameneh chose to show grace and forgiveness, a powerful act of mercy. Ameneh's act echoes the greatest act of forgiveness, when God freely forgave us for the wrongs we'd committed against him. When Jesus died on the cross, it was the equivalent of God taking acid onto his face. He showed us that whenever we experience the effects of sin in our lives from another person, we're always called to show forgiveness. Forgiveness is crucial, however our justice system operates. As the Apostle Paul wrote, it is because of God's forgiveness for us that we're called to forgive others. Hey, thanks for tuning into Everyday God Conversations today. For more on having your own God Conversations, go to godconversations.com.